Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of We Bought a Mic, a podcast about empires and rebellions. We're talking Andor, Season 2, all episodes now streaming on Disney+. What may end up being the show of the year. My name's Ernest, and I am so excited to welcome a longtime returning friend of the pod, Adam. How you doing, man?
I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to both talk about a wonderful show that I love so much that has restored my faith a little bit in the larger Star Wars brand, but only by so much because it feels too good to be true. And also to deepen Bob Iger's pockets just a little bit.
Just a bit. Just a tad.
Just a little bit. Just a little bit.
And joining us for the first time, please give a warm welcome to Resistance fighter Vihan. How you doing?
Great. Good to be here. Let's talk some Star Wars.
Let's kind of broaden out the scope a little bit here. Because Adam, you and I, we did a pod on season 1 of Andor. Was it 2022? So folks can go back and listen to that if they want our thoughts on season 1. Obviously, we loved it, right?
Yeah, but, I mean, it's incredible. It's so good.
But Vihan, this is your first time on the WBAM feed, so I want to give you the floor first. Like, tell us your thoughts, not just on Andor season 1. Before we even get to season 2, but Star Wars as a whole.
So this is kind of funny, but the story goes that I was in 7th grade. I was taking a civics class in middle school. And, you know, normally sometimes the teacher has a thing where they do the final exam a few days before. And the day of the final exam, they put on a movie. So my civics teacher at the time put on The Empire Strikes Back. At that time, I was a 7th grader. I was probably like 13, maybe 12. Didn't know what Star Wars was. So The Empire Strikes Back was the first movie that I had ever seen. And one would like to say that my life was never the same afterwards. And so I'm pretty sure after that, took me a bit to actually like understand the Star Wars universe. I watched a bit of the Clone Wars. I watched A New Hope and Return of the Jedi later on, then watched the prequel. So it was kind of all over the place, not a specific viewing order. And so I was like, this is really cool. I did grow up admiring space and astronomy and the idea of having laser wars in space seemed really cool to me as a kid. And as we grow up, you go into high school and college, and you develop a passion in politics. You realize Star Wars has amazing parallels to politics in the real world, and to how our society works, things like that. Stories of struggle, stories of hope. I think it's very inspiring. I will say I did see the sequels when they came out. We can talk about that later, but I do have this thing where I usually never have the time commitment to see like a full TV show. I'll see a film because you sit down for 3 hours and you're done with it there. It's not like that for a TV show. You have multiple episodes and multiple seasons. It's a fair bit of time commitment that I usually don't have. So one of my friends was saying, we know you don't do TV shows, but you have to watch Andor. You have to make the exception for that. And so I did watch Andor season 1 just about, I would say, 2 or 3 months ago. So I was pretty late.
Wow.
Yeah, I did watch season 1 about 2 or 3 months ago. And I saw season 2 when it came out. So all in a relatively short span of time. And I thought it was amazing. And there's a lot to talk about. So let's get into that.
Just real quick, because I know I've always referred to Adam as like a representative of, he is a zillennial king. but a representative of like mostly Gen Z, because like I've been told that I can't claim Zillennial, that I am fully in the millennial camp. So I look to folks like Adam to let me in on what the youths are saying. But Vihan, I know you are firmly in the Gen Z camp. So I'm very curious, like, you know, when you look at Star Wars, Andor aside, what pieces of Star Wars do you gravitate the most toward? Because I have a feeling you're going to say the prequels, or am I wrong?
Kind of. There's a mixed story to it. My favorite Star Wars movie is Revenge of the Sith. So yes, my favorite Star Wars movie is a sequel. My bad, I misspoke.
Prequel.
But the prequels are not my favorite trilogy. I would still say that I'd stick to the originals. I rewatched them about a week ago, and you still feel that kind of nostalgia, and it feels weird to say because I'm 22 years old. I've never lived in the 1980s when these movies were made, but you still feel that nostalgia for some reason. I think it is a really special feeling.
And you like Rogue One? Is that one of your picks?
I do really like Rogue One. I'd put that in my top 4.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. All right, Adam, let's go to you. If folks are listening to this and they didn't do their homework, they didn't go back and listen to our Andor season 1 pod, give them a reminder, give them a refresher. What's your Star Wars take? How do you feel about this beloved cultural artifact?
Oh gosh, it's such a massive relationship that I have that I'll try to condense in a single little spiel. I mean, my first memory of Star Wars was when I was like, I think I was like 4 years old when I saw Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man in theaters. And I remember like walking through or not even walking, like probably in a fucking stroller, like in the Regal lobby. And I saw a giant like banner for Attack of the Clones. And I like asked my mom, I'm like, what is that? And she's like, that's Star Wars. And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, yeah. And I think after that, I don't even know what I started with. I was so young, but I know after that, into like episode 3, which I feel like a lot of Gen Z, and I'm only like barely Gen Z. Like I think the cutoff is like 96, 97 or something like that. So I'm like older cusp Gen Z, but yeah, if I am in that category, like I think a lot of people, like you're kind of like how you asked, like a lot of us do gravitate towards the prequels. I'm not like these are masterpieces, like I'm not like blind to the flaws with them, but I do have a lot of nostalgia with them, and I think a lot of people do. It's just I mean I
definitely do, even as someone who's like for you know, the youths can gatekeep all they want. But yeah, I played lightsabers with my brother. Shout out to Mauricio. We reenacted. We knew the entire Mustafar script by heart, and we just said it to each other.
I mean, I just I went with my girlfriend Victoria to see the re-release of Revenge of the Sith.
I'm so sad I missed it. You went, Vihan, right?
Of course I did.
Yeah,
then it came out.
I went I think we were out of town that weekend, so I was we had to go like the Tuesday or Wednesday like after, and I didn't even realize this until I like sat down, but I saw it for any Orlando locals, like the West Oaks Theater on West Colonial or on Ocoee, I should say. I saw it at that theater when I was 8 years old, and then I just realized, like as I was sitting there, I'm like, wait, I'm seeing this again at West Oaks. And not only that, but I'm in the same auditorium I was in when I was 8, rewatching it 20 years later, which was a very surreal feeling. Yeah. And I felt like the Winter Soldier getting activated as like all the iconic lines were happening, because I couldn't even like help it. I was just like whispering it under my breath, like as they were saying certain lines. And then, you know, kind of like you were saying, like it comes and goes throughout your life. You know, like I've always loved Star Wars, but of course, naturally, like I watched Clone Wars as it was airing. I was a big Clone Wars kid. Like I saw the movie in theaters. I had the action figures. I watched it weekly on Cartoon Network. And then the sequels came out, and I remember Force Awakens was a huge deal for me personally because I was like 17 when that one came out, and I had just gotten a job at my local AMC theater, and I remember like the night or the day that I got hired, they were holding like an employee screening for it, and I was like, but I was like, it was my first day, so I didn't want to be like, can I come? But I just like kind of nervously asked the manager, I'm like, can I like, I know I'm like
Let me get in there.
training, but can I go? And he's like, oh yeah, yeah. He was literally like, oh yeah, sure, whatever, you can come. And I'm like, awesome, great. My life has changed forever. And I had a very unhealthy obsession with the sequels. Well, at least Force Awakens, The Last Jedi. I still love The Last Jedi. I think The Last Jedi is fantastic.
It remains the high point of at least the theatrically released Disney stuff.
Yeah, and I love Rogue One. I like Solo quite a bit. All solid stuff. Rise of Skywalker is a bad movie. I know we did a pod on it back in 2019, and if listeners go back,
we did.
They will hear me heavily coping. They will hear me heavily cope. I am not that man anymore. But I acknowledge the copium that was being ingested.
Right.
I love Star Wars, warts and all. The Disney Plus-ification of Star Wars.
It's been rough.
It's been rough. I like the first 2 seasons of Mandalorian quite a bit. I think that other than Andor, that may be it. Like I thought Acolyte, I don't like, there's things like, I don't hate the Acolyte.
It's got some good stuff. It's got Boba arms. Fett. It's got Manny Jacinto arms.
Yeah. So. Like that stuff's good. Honestly, the like creative stuff, like the things where they actually like take risks and they do things with it are great. It's just like the fact that they all look and feel the same largely is what gets under my skin.
Slop.
And it just, it's slop. And then so that's just a way of getting to the fact that Andor instantly felt different, and not even just for Star Wars. It just feels like different for Disney Plus. It feels different for like just what you can do with any IP, any property you can breathe life into if you just have, funnily enough, people who care, who have a story to tell. Isn't that an amazing concept of like just giving the keys to people who want to be there? Like,
right.
It's great.
Respect the audience enough to understand that not everyone watching is a soy face, like I clap at the reference fan. Right. Like that's the triumph of Andor, is that it loves Star Wars. It respects Star Wars, but it knows that it can't just pander endlessly to the quote unquote fans. And, I went back and I listened to our season 1 pod. I didn't get a chance to listen to the whole thing, but I listened to a bit at the end where we were sort of speculating about what season 2 might be. And to sort of lead into it a little bit, I'll just say, like, with the Disney Plus stuff, I got to a point where I just like, I had to dip out. Like, I still haven't seen Skeleton Crew. I probably never will, honestly, maybe one day. But I knew that Tony Gilroy was going to have our backs, and I was a little worried, because there's no guarantee that they're going to be able to replicate the near perfection of season 1. But I knew that with all the right creatives involved, we were probably going to get something really good. And, in anticipation for it, or I guess just preparing for this podcast, I went back and I listened to our speculation. And Adam, you were hitting these marks where you're just like, I want to see what happens to Luthen. I want to see how Mon Mothma escapes from the Senate. Like, you kind of knew.
Oh, I didn't even remember this. Okay.
Yeah, you kind of knew like the vision, right?
Oh, wow.
What we were likely to get. So to lead into it, like I really want to dig into it, but in case people haven't yet seen, if you're listening to this and you haven't seen Andor season 2, we're going to give you some very, very brief spoiler-free thoughts on this incredible show. But then we got to dig into it. We have to talk in detail about it. So Adam, you can go first. Let's be brief. What did you think? of Andor season 2?
Yeah, I mean, so I guess just to briefly say, like, Andor season 1, just to recap, fucking incredible. Like, it was so good, and in many ways, it the fact that a season 2 is coming out scared me, because I'm like, it's so good that, like, it has so much to live up to, and I just felt like I was overhyping it, because I just felt like if you just look at like the Narkina 5 like arc in season 1, I think like you take Star Wars out of it, that's some of the best TV period I've seen in the last 5 years. Like, that's just some of the best, like, writing, payoff, execution, visuals, performances, like everything just came. And you know, I mean, every episode of that season's great, but that, when I think of Andor season 1, I think of Narkina 5. That's like,
yes,
the GOAT, right? Yes. And so going into Andor, and I know you're part of the same guild that I am, where we get access to the same press stuff. Although you were different from me, because we got access to the entire season of Andor about, I think, 3 months ago. They gave us the entire second season, and I respect you. You did not partake. You waited to watch it. You're a good boy. I was not so noble. I digested that within 3 days. I
inhaled it.
I all 12 episodes, like that Friday, Saturday, Sunday, gone. Like, I completely gave it to Andor. And it fully lived up to the hype. I will say, I think I prefer season 1, just in terms of, like, there's such a tightness to that season that I think it is just on a whole other level. But I can also not imagine a better second season. Like, I have very, very tiny, like, minuscule, truly, like, nitpicks with, like, the first, I'd say, 2 episodes of the season. And they're great. Just, like, little, like, you know, getting the gears turning again, like, pacing issues. But once you get to, like, episode 3, it is just, like, we're off to the races. It's perfection. We'll get into, like, each individual, like, 3 arc, but, like, every single one felt so singular. And I thought the, like, format of counting down up until the Battle of Yavin leading into Rogue One was a perfect format, narratively.
Yeah,
so,
the year breaks.
Yes,
they were.
It was really impressive.
All right, Beyond, let's go to you. Tell us not only your thoughts on Andor season 2, but you watched, like, essentially the entirety of Andor, both seasons 1 and 2, in one swoop. So let us know your thoughts.
Season 1, I thought, was amazing. I thought the best arc was the one on Aldhani. I did really enjoy the Narkina prison arc. As for season 2, a lot more political than season 1, at least more outwardly, I would say. And it really took me by shock as to how grounded Star Wars was in reality, in bureaucracy, in how governance, rebellions work on a day-to-day basis. The people that make it happen, not just the people who do the show, as you might see in the original trilogy. It really makes you see Rogue One in a whole new light, even if you've watched it before Andor even came out. So again, even if you've already watched it, you should see it again after seeing the whole show. I think it is incredibly important, because it does show that movie in an entirely new light.
Yeah, so for me, I totally agree with you guys. I think this is the best show I've seen this year. I mean, it is just gobsmackingly incredible achievement of television. You watch it and you just can't believe how high level it is in terms of the writing, the performances, the costumes, the set design, the music. Everything clicks. I do kind of agree a little bit with the point about season 1 being better, but only because it felt so fresh and it felt so new. And you felt like Star Wars was operating at a level that you didn't think it could at this stage, for, you know, a property that's been around since 1977. So season 2 obviously is not going to feel as fresh. You kind of know a little bit what you're getting. But I think season 2 as a whole is more consistent, and they're telling what seems to be a much more tightly packaged story that leads directly into the events of Rogue One. And beyond, to your point about the sort of the political bureaucracy and those themes, that I think is what makes it the show of the year. For us to be in this time that we are right now in the second Trump presidency and seeing, we're only a couple months into his second term and seeing the chaos and destruction of Trump 2.0, it's something that you can't help but think about when you watch Andor. And it's a testament to the quality of the writing from Gilroy and from his creative partners. They're able to make a show that is entertaining and enjoyable, but also makes your mind expand to those levels where you are thinking about it deeper and connecting it to our current reality in a way that feels endlessly rewarding. I mean, I've been thinking about this show so much since it wrapped. Been just listening to so many Gilroy interviews and listening to analyses and reading analyses, and continuing to give it life in my head as I examine all of the different ways that it earns that analyses, that scrutiny. So I think it's a total triumph. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about what actually happens in Andor season 2. So if you don't want to know what happens, you got all the recommendations you need. You have all 12 episodes, all 24 episodes if you're counting the first season. If you haven't seen a lick of it, please go watch it and then dive in to this podcast, because we are going to spoil the hell out of it. Starting with the first trio of episodes. So essentially what we get are 4 trios for a total of 12 episodes for this season. And this first one finds our main character Andor on a mission, and the beauty of this kind of opening arc is we honestly don't even know what the mission is. It entails stealing an Imperial TIE fighter and crash landing on this moon that we later discover is Yavin 4, which is just like such a great moment at the end of the arc. So let's start with you, Vihan. What do you think of this first trio of episodes? So many other things happen that I did just mention with all these other characters with Luthen and Bix and everything. So feel free to shout that out. But we're talking about the first trio of episodes here.
We're talking about the first trio. One, if you dive into the lore as to what this TIE fighter is, you find out it's a TIE Avenger, and the TIE Avenger is really cool. It shows that it's sort of a different doctrine in Imperial military technological development. Usually, they go with the TIE fighters. If they want some more specialized units, they'll go with TIE interceptors, and it's usually not enough to crack Rebel fighters like X-wings.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, that so to talk about me being a little bit nervous starting the show, because I did feel like I was, overhyping the show potentially, just based off of how like amazing season 1 was. Literally from the opening, I like that entire like little set piece where he steals the TIE Avenger and he gets the fuck out of there. It's such an incredible set piece. The best visuals I've ever seen on Disney Plus. It looks like a movie. It looks incredible. But also like even before like the action starts, that little like moment he has with that.
Yeah, literally the opening scene is such a perfect way to sort of ease you back into the vibe of this show.
You relearn everything you need to know about Cassian in the first like 5 minutes, where he is committed to the cause. He's very nervous because he knows the stakes of what he's doing. And I love that you don't fully know either what even is the big deal about what's happening. Like, you just know it's another piece of the puzzle that Luthen probably sent him on. He's just like, you're just thrown in the middle of the action. But I love that little,
and like, he probably doesn't even know.
He doesn't.
That's how Luthen operates.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's but yeah, that little conversation he has with the lady who's like, is it worth it? Can I do this? And he's like, look at me. It's just like perfect. It's so good.
You've come home to yourself. You're part
Yes.
of something bigger. Just the way he lets her know the impact of this risk that she's taking by helping him, it gave me chills. I was like, oh
Yeah.
my God, like what is this show? How is this so good?
It's amazing how like all my worries faded away the second that exchange happened. I'm like,
Immediately.
nope. I'm like, we're back. We're good. It's good. We're back. It's so yeah. It starts off with a bang, and this arc. I mean, so I mentioned earlier, like there is like a little bit of like a. It's not so much this opening. Like the opening itself is fantastic. The crashing on the jungle planet and like everything with like the hostages, I did find a little wonky initially. Now that I've like sat with it and I've even rewatched those first three episodes, I've appreciated them more. I can see like the bigger picture, but especially when you get to like episode like 6 and 7 and whatnot, you're kind of like, man, it just kind of like fades in comparison to those. But and I still like do rewatch those episodes and I'm like, okay, the introduction to these like group of rebels is a little shaky, even though I do appreciate the larger picture of like, you see these guys who are just completely without cause. They're so disbanded. They're not organized. And it teaches Cassian a lesson of the importance of organization, of alliance, of being on the same page, of, so I like, it's not like the themes are not lost on me. If I'm just like really nitpicking because I think the first season is so, perfect in terms of structure and pace and everything, where those like tiny little like areas of messiness where I kind of see it is only just in reflection to how perfect everything else is.
We got to call them they're the Maya Pay Brigade. That's what this whole group is called. And there's a fissure. And I think the beauty of this bit is to show you that, not only do these people not even understand the larger cause that they're a part of, but even within a faction of a faction, there are factions, right?
Yes.
And there's infighting. And that is such a major takeaway from this show and from this season is this idea of the Rebel Alliance as we see it in the original Star Wars movies being this end point of a long string of failures and of messy, devolved attempts at cohesion. But there are so many other things in this arc that we got to talk about. So Vihan, jump in here. Thoughts on Mon Mothma, the wedding, everything with this planet that's like mountain planet, fancy wedding mountain planet. What are your thoughts here?
Chandrila. What was the planet, I believe. And
yes.
It has a certain vibe to it. You can see the Chandrilan influence in Mon Mothma's apartment on Coruscant, where she does her parties. You see bonsai plants, and you can kind of tell that it's directly inspired from Japan. It doesn't necessarily have a pro-imperial vibe, not at all. Kind of appears that they tried to appear that they're straggling the needle, not exactly imperial fanatical planet, but has a liberal but also a certain like orthodox and traditionalist vibe to it. Hence, signified by Skolden, the businessman, saying, to Mon Mothma, I will help you hide all your money from the Imperials as long as you give me your daughter, which, again, is not something Mon Mothma likes. She does not appreciate those very traditionalist, conservative aspects of the society that she comes from. And so while she is a reformer, the people surrounding her aren't necessarily so, especially if you look at Tay Kolma or Perrin, or Skalden. And so it's a very interesting backdrop. The wedding really examines the struggle that she's going through, that um, a rebellion against what you could consider an evil government that oppresses the entire galaxy is not fun and games. It requires
Right.
hard sacrifices, even among, you could say, the upper echelons of society. You might, if you're Mon Mothma, you're certainly not the folks on the ground who are actually dying and waging battles against the Empire. You're a bit more protected from all that, but you still have to make hard sacrifices. And I think the wedding arc it does really well at showing that.
Yeah, I mean that entire like I really loved this side of it, like especially how it really progresses like kind of, and I say this positively, like I like how slowly you get through this arc, like in like comparison to everything that happens with like Cassian and Bix and everything. Like you see everything that Mon's going through. I think in episode 2 it's like when when she's talking to to Luthen about like how she suspects that Tay may like rat out the rebellion or like speak out about it. And I forgot, I haven't rewatched it like in a few months, but when she says like, I don't know what you mean by that. And he says, how nice for you. Like, that's one of my favorite, like, it's been stuck in my head, like, ever since I saw that episode. It's so good. And it's just one of the many amazing line readings from Stellan Skarsgård. It just great stuff. Yeah, I love that. And that's another thing that I really loved about the first season is that how it portrays Mon, who is, I mean, I've always like enjoyed Mon Mothma as a character, but you don't have any other than it. Like if you read the books, there's no depth to her until you get to Andor, because
No, she's like a C-list Star Wars character at best.
Yeah, like I get that I'm like one of the 5 people on Earth that has like read some of the like newer canon novels, but so like when I saw that she was, but also like how do you do like a show about the formation of the Rebel Alliance and not have Mon Mothma in it? So I find that really interesting, and I think the way they handle her is it's perfect. Like the way they continue that from season 1, which is a perfect setup of like everything that leads into here, like with her daughter and the finances and her marriage and all that stuff. They perfectly like set the groundwork in season 1, and these 3 episodes, while not like the end of her arc by any means, it feels like the beginning of the end of this facade that she is covering this, like she's trying to, I don't think she's trying to live both lives, but she's trying to keep it up as long as she can. She's trying to keep this illusion or the inevitable out of where she's going to have to truly get out of there and fully, join the rebels.
Well, the dance, I think, is the moment she leaves it all on the dance floor. I think that is such kind of like an expert, kind of filmmaking choice to be like, okay, we're not going to give her a monologue. We're just going to do this dialogue-less sequence to let the audience know this is it. This is the last time, the last moment that she is able to fully hold on to both sides of this double life. And also, I think if you did want a dialogue moment pinned into that, it's the moment with her daughter right before the wedding ceremony. I think that's a beautiful scene where you see this divide. It's not just a generational divide. It's like a Empire rebel divide where the daughter is basically telling her like, hey, I am totally okay living as on the Empire side of things and being rich and turning a blind eye to all the horrors that are going to continue to unfold. That's the life that I'm choosing, and you need to be okay with me choosing that. And that is a key part leading to Mon's eventual, full on track to rebel leader. Because I don't think you see her daughter ever again after that scene, right?
I
It's like the
don't
last
believe
scene
so.
of Mom's
No.
daughter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And God, and I mean, I'm not. I joke about how I'm like one of the few people that like reads the canon books. Like I don't read all of them, but I've read for example, if you want to read like a really good one about like the inner workings of the Rebel Alliance, Bloodlines. It's about
Oh, I've heard about
Leia.
that one.
Yeah, it's about Leia, and it's about the aftermath of Return of the Jedi, and basically the public finding out that she's Vader's daughter, and the backlash politically that occurs. And it's genuinely a fantastic book. So like you get like a little bit of Mon in that, but like otherwise, like I don't know if I've read that many things with Mon, and I don't know if there's like a canon answer as to if she even like sees her daughter or talks to her again, which is pretty bleak, all things considered. Like either way, like either she only vicariously keeps up with her or she doesn't, like she truly has to abandon the life
Right.
and just kind of trusts that, okay, she's married, she's gone, I have to commit to this. Like either way, it's like really intense and emotionally harrowing. So that's great. And like also it's kind of a small part of this 3-episode arc, but I want to bring up like the Deidre and Syril stuff too. Just
I love it. The mom,
a home run.
Dinner with Mom.
Yes, which I forgot that actress's name that plays the mom. But she was like in Poor Things, and she's in so much stuff.
Tragedy of Macbeth.
Yes, yeah, she's great. That scene is it's perfect.
Catherine
the lead into
Hunter.
Yes, she's awesome.
Edie Karn. She kills it.
So I think one thing I do remember about our pod that we did for season 1, Ernest, is that we were both really into like Cyril's arc that season. Or like just the journey that he goes on as a character. Yeah, it's really nuts what his like progression as a character and how he's like you don't want to say that his heart's in the right place because that feels disingenuous, but like he has like an urge where he genuinely does believe he's doing the right thing. He's not like these other guys in the Empire. They know what genocide is. They know that they are doing it for gain and like for all these different reasons.
Yeah. The Orson Krennic like intro where he's basically laying out the Ghorman plan up front. Like it's all there.
Dude, I could talk a whole pot on just that scene alone. But like the Syril like thing is so compelling because he genuinely, and this is so scary, he believes that the system is operating with efficiency and that he, at least in this side of the episode,
law and order,
he's committed to that cause, which it's kind of scary that he's him and Andor are two different sides of the same coin where they're both committed to the cause, one obviously right and the other wrong, but with equal commitment. And to just immediately jump back into that again is just fantastic. I loved that entire side of this season.
Syril is a really fascinating character in the sense that he's not like somebody like Palpatine or Tarkin or Krennic. He's not the guy that knows the plan and that he's not consciously aware that the regime he's serving is committed to a campaign of terror across the galaxy, and to squash whoever stands in the way of, at least in Andor, the Death Star. And so he believes that he's doing it for justice, and it's not justice in the way we would typically perceive justice to be. It's a warped sense of justice, driven largely by imperial propaganda and, as you could say, an excessive commitment to law and order. You can see that in season 1 when he is so committed to, I have to find Andor, like finding Cassian Andor is my life purpose. That's the kind of thinking he has. And so, you might think, what's the law and order in that? Well, the law and order is that 2 corporate cops got murdered by Cassian, but Cyril's the kind of guy who is not able to understand why did that happen. what did these corporate cops do that got them into that situation? Even his boss understood that, because he knew that the less you pursue this matter, the less you engage with the Empire. And that's a good thing, especially if you're one of the self-governing corporate regions of the galaxy. You don't want big government to trample upon what you're doing, because you want to do your own thing. And so in some ways, Syril has his heart in the right place. In most ways, he doesn't. I saw him as a character who might potentially defect to the rebellion in season 2. Did not happen. And I think he
would have, if he would have lived long enough, he probably would have.
He came close. And I think that's really fleshed out in the Ghorman arc, which was third arc of season 2, where he really finds out a lot of what the Empire is really trying to do on Ghorman. Of course, he doesn't find out everything, because that would be something that's classified for someone like him, who's essentially a middle manager and a bureaucrat. But he
put too much good faith in his superiors. He thought that they were somehow good. You know, that was his failing, wasn't it? That he wasn't evil. That he wasn't as evil as his bosses.
You can see that when he gets really angry at Dedra, and she's like his girlfriend, and afterwards jumps into the crowd as somebody who works for the Empire. Jumping into into a crowd that is going to get seriously hurt is a very interesting move that I didn't understand at first, but it does kind of suggest the idea that he knows what they're doing there is very wrong. But again, he kind of doesn't get sidetracked when he sees Andor, because again, life mission, find Andor, and so that's the end of Syril Karn.
I mean, now that you're bringing that up, I mean, Who Are You is one of the best moments,
dude,
of Star Wars. Like, that has to be up there with like I Love You, I Know. I couldn't believe it. It was so good.
I forgot the guy who plays Syril, the actor, but his performance, just his face, like the way he looks at Andor after he says that to him, is
Kyle
like
Soller.
Yes, incredible performance from him in both seasons. But his acting, just with his eyes and his face alone, the way he looks with it paints an entire picture right before he dies of like, is everything my pursuit of you? Is my cause? Is everything a waste? Was I in the wrong? Was like you can see all of that in his expressions, and then he fucking dies. And it's like, Tony Gilroy, thank you, buddy. Like, it's so good. It's so good. I mean, yeah, we could easily just fully like jump into, because that's like easily like the best side of the season. It's just like what they do with that arc and
this whole middle chunk. Let's just talk about it in one go, because you get the setup. The first 3 are like introduced to Ghorman, to the planet, and then the next 3 is 1 year later. It is more and more beaten down by imperial oppression to the point where we get the Ghorman massacre. So I think we can just talk about all 6 in one go. And we've skipped a little bit. You know, we haven't talked about Bix yet. We haven't talked about B2 Emo. Is that
Dude, there's so much. The little robot
name?
Yeah, he's so cute. I think that's his name. He's so cute. I love him. So he's so sad.
We'll have to double back, but let's get into Ghorman, because this is the meat of this season. Like, this is I think what makes this season of television in the conversation for the best story that Star Wars has ever done. And it's hard to say that like Andor season 2 is the best Star Wars ever because there's like no lightsabers and no force in it. So it's like, I don't want to go all the way there, but this middle chunk of the all the stuff in Ghorman leading all the way to the escape from the Senate, the speech of Mon in the Senate and the escape, like I was levitating. I mean, I don't know what I was expecting, but whatever I was expecting, those expectations were completely blown out of the water as I was witnessing what they achieved with this. And it's not so like flashy and overblown, you know? A lot of it is just, it's the plaza set, it's Syril's office, it's the Coruscant apartment. You know, it's Luthen's like art shop. They kind of pick these spots and you're not really getting a lot of overblown flair, right? They pick these moments and they let these actors cook and they fill these spaces with tangible objects that you can touch and you can feel. And it's not the fucking volume set that's just an LED screen that you can only move like 2 inches and the shot won't be right. I just love everything about it. I mean, there's so much to get into, but I'm really curious what resonated the most with you guys. You can go first, Adam.
I mean, going back briefly to that part where you mentioned like that, because this will lead into the Ghorman thing, obviously, because I think it's episode 1 or 2, the one where they're having the meeting about Ghorman.
That's really early on. Yeah, when it's essentially I think it's episode 1, is it not? Yeah. Yeah, they let you know like one of the main through lines of the season, like right up top, like here's this planet that we're going to mine, we're going to destroy it as we mine it, so we need to manufacture a resistance that we can then control, that we can then quell. It's so
insane like that. So like that is a perfect like lead in to this little like 3/6 episode arc, because you're right, like it is like a separate like year thing with like between 3 and 6 and then 7 through 9, but it all does kind of bleed together because I like the 7 through 9 would not work without the groundwork that's laid in 3 through 6. And that like scene that I'm talking about, like Krennic and Deidre and, you know, all them like in the like I've read an interview where Tony Gilroy talks about how he visually took the inspiration from I cannot remember the exact historical event, but basically the meeting that the Nazis had when they decided to implement their plan.
The final solution. Yeah.
The sort of yes, correct. The final solution. And that's fucking nuts. That's crazy, like in the best way to take for a Star Wars show.
Wannsee conference, I think is what it's called.
Absolutely.
Or Wannsee if you're German.
Yeah. And I think it's so evident, like as you're watching this, that this is supposed to be like the parallels are like there for like the Jewish people. Like it really is. Like it's
they catered. They have like little bites that they're eating as they're discussing it.
Yeah, and like, but what I also like too is that they do also keep it very Star Warsy. Like I like all the like little world building, which just makes it hit all the harder when the massacre goes down. Of like, I don't know, like the Ghormans, like they have like
the spiders,
trinkets, the spiders that they make. You know, they like a lot of them make money by like being like vendors on the streets, and they have like little spider trinkets and like memorabilia that they sell to tourists. You know what I mean? Like little things like that make it. But also like the sequence where Syril infiltrates the meeting with the Ghorman rebellion. There's a name for them. I forgot their name. The Gore, I think. And where you kind of see the first like light in him, where you can see it in his eyes. He starts to question, like, wait, are these bad guys? Because these
Yeah,
seem
but
like
he
dudes.
also feels like a cool spy. He's like, ooh,
Yeah,
I'm in here.
but that's the thing. That's the great thing about Syril is that like both things are true with him. Where I feel like you can see it in his eyes. Like when he's talking to somebody, you see the contemplation. Like he knows the mission. He knows, and he still, not to his credit, he still ultimately feeds the information that gets them fucked in the first place. That obviously, but overall, like it's just those little moments where he's connecting with the Ghorman, and he has that like moment of like, and it's just like those little moments that really pave way, right, for like I forgot what exact episode he strikes out in, but it's incredible. So yeah, that entire like little section where they're building up the Gormans and you get to learn about the culture and you get to see both sides of the faction, like Andor spying for Luthen and then Syril spying for the Empire, and it's perfect.
On Gorman, it's one of the events in Star Wars which you could call an event of mass destruction. If we compare that to the originals, what I could think of is the destruction of the Death Star in The New Hope, the destruction of the Death Star 2 in Return of the Jedi. It's shown in a very spectacular way, but it's not shown in a steady step by step way. And I think that's what Andor really does well, and it shows you that the Empire is just not an entity where you take a few X-wing fighters into a superstructure and blow it up. There are bureaucrats on the ground. Some of them, while doing incredibly evil things, also being somewhat competent. And so you see how the Empire builds support among the wider galactic population for the destruction of Ghorman through things like false flag attacks, sympathy generated for fallen Imperial soldiers through propaganda spread by corrupted reporters. At this point, the media is entirely corrupted by the Empire, and every time an altercation happens in Ghorman, they start telling people, look, some of our soldiers have fallen. They are now martyrs, and the people that are responsible for this destruction are the Ghor. And so they have this kind of escalatory rhetoric that builds that support for the total destruction of Ghorman, to the point where the galactic population is conditioned to not care when it reaches its fullest extent. I think that is
but just
incredibly
not just
horrifying.
that, but champion the destruction of the insurrectionists, right? Like they're cheering on the Empire, right?
Yeah.
It's like for the greater good, like quote unquote, like it's like a net positive that they're trying to spin it as.
Well, you touched on something there that I want to highlight, which is like this idea of, first of all, we got to say like Ghorman is the rich planet, right? That's part of the propaganda machine, right? Is this idea of this is not some Tatooine backwoods hick planet. This is like the main textile, like high-end producer of silk of the galaxy is choosing to stand up against the Empire. Like that is for both sides, and that's one of the incredible things about this arc is that that scene between Luthen and Andor, when Andor comes back from his mission and he says they're way in over their heads. They're not ready. They can't be part of this. They don't know what they're in for. And Luthen says, if it burns, it will burn brightly, right? Because it's such a visible target. And so for both the rebels and the Empire, it becomes this very desirable hotbed of resistance, right? Because if the Empire is able to manufacture this insurrection and quell it, they seem more powerful They appear as more powerful. And what you were saying, Vihan, about all these things outlining this like apparatus, the fact that that's a part of Star Wars is amazing. Like, we just need to pause and acknowledge that, because George Lucas tried that in the prequels, and most people hated it, right? They it didn't work. The way he went about it, the way he tried to tell this story of politics and you know, bureaucracy and systems giving way to fascism. It's only now being appreciated, not to the extent where I'm going to, be an apologist for movies that are, not great, but at the time, like, people were very allergic to it. And so for Tony Gilroy to kind of backtrack on that and give you like, hey, look at these board meetings, look at these conference rooms, right? This is where fascism happens, right? This is where we draw out the plans for oppression and disinformation, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to sound like a little too like I know that I'm talking about an A24 prestige drama versus a Star Wars movie, but it's zone of interest vibes, like, with
For
those
real?
sequences. Yeah, I think.
Vihan, any thoughts?
Really interesting to look at the conference that Krennic does in his little nest, as you could call it, on the Snow Mountain planet, where he's even able to convince his own underlings, and he knows that he can't reveal the full scale of Project Stardust because of how classified and how secret it has to be. And so he tries to at least pretend that the destruction on Ghorman is necessary for the greater good by saying it's part of the Emperor's energy program. We're trying to have unlimited energy
program
to help outer rim planets or whatever. And so I suppose it's a very compelling narrative for the people in the imperial bureaucracy to comfort themselves and say, we're not the bad guys. We're just doing the greater good. And some of these things are a necessary evil, at least from their perspective. But as for Krennic himself, I think Ben Mendelsohn did a masterclass at performing.
So well
him.
done.
So good to see him again.
Krennic is the stereotypical middle manager, as you could call it. A bit of a superiority complex, more than a bit, actually, I would say. And he's always looking for people to boss around, whether that be Dedramiro or Major Partagaz, who he is somewhat friendly with. But if you've seen Rogue One, you end up knowing that there's always bigger fish. And he's nothing compared to Tarkin or Vader or even Palpatine, for that matter. But one would suspect, and I'm theorizing here, when he claims that I've met the Emperor and he's talked to me about this and that, and if any of you guys breach protocol, this will be brought to the Emperor's personal attention. My theory is that he has never had a conversation with the Emperor.
I love that theory.
Yeah.
I don't know how true that is, but that's my guess.
I agree with that. Yeah, no, because even like in Rogue One, like that sequence he has with Vader, like I think it's clear in that scene that they've had conversations before, but even then, Vader, who is only like the assistant to the Emperor, just kind of looks at Krennic as a nuisance more than anything. The don't choke on your aspirations line.
Well, his project is like many years over over
overdue.
time.
Yeah, which I mean, because his excuse is it's oh my god, what's his name? Matt Mikkelsen's character, Galen Erso. Yeah, like, but Vader doesn't give a fuck. That's his. He's like, yo, I need this thing pronto. So it's funny, like. And it's so funny to see him like on the opposite end of it here, where what you know about Krennic because you've seen Rogue One, but here he is like the most intimidating guy, where he's kind of like the underdog of Rogue One. So it's kind of interesting to see like the tables or like the roles reversed a little bit, so to speak.
He's the big dog here.
He's the big dog, whereas in Rogue One, I mean, because like he's in even before the Vader sequence, like he's in competition with Tarkin. Like Tarkin takes the credit. Which is honestly, it's an amazing thing where, we're like Syril and Deidre both like learned the lesson the hard way of like how much, even if you fully commit to fascism, what exactly gets you by the end is like just. And I say devastating, not with like necessarily sympathy for these guys, but just like devastating in the sense of like the reality of the situation. Same thing with like if you watch it like as a through line, if you look like seasons 1, 2, and Rogue One as a trilogy, where Krennic ends up by the end, where he same exact fate, like he goes through all these guys to get the Death Star just for Tarkin to take the credit for it, for Vader to not appreciate what he did, and then to die on what's it called, Jeddah, that the planet the
no,
end.
It's Theon's background. It's Scarif.
Yeah, I forgot that Scarif. Sorry, at 5 years ago, Adam would have been crushed that immediately. I'm losing a little bit track of the names of the planets.
The one
the one he dies on in the middle of the movie. Right,
we're gonna have to talk about Saw.
As he says, you stand here upon my achievement.
Yes. God, he's so good.
But ultimately, he finds out that he's nothing. He gets blown up by the own weapon that he put so much work into building. And so,
God, it's so good.
I think it shows that the nature of hierarchical systems and people like Tarkin fundamentally don't care about Krennic. They only care that they get the weapon. And so ultimately many of these folks are disposable. If you see the end, by the end of
the Syrils and the Deidres too.
Yeah. The end of Andor season 2, compare the ISB starting at the beginning of Andor season 1 to the end of season 2, a bunch of supervisors are either dead or in prison. So you've seen this organization completely collapse. So I think that's interesting to see, because some of these folks really ambitious, really looking to make a name for themselves. Deidre ends up in prison. Hirt, I believe,
he gets used as a shield.
Gets killed in a raid.
That's such a good scene where K2 just picks him up and he just gets shot like 40 times.
Dude, that shot is so crazy. There's one little like arc here that I want to touch on, just because it's so minuscule, and I feel like we may brush over it if I don't bring it up. The relationship with Vel and Senta. That's like, because if we're gonna talk about like how where Krennic ends up, right, or Syril or whatever, like these characters that they either die or they have a fate almost worse than death in terms of Deidre, right? Committed to their cause, and they see how far that gets them. With them, it's kind of crazy because the scene where Senta dies is heartbreaking, but like there's so many like elements to Andor that show you like characters dying for a cause. They're dying either righteously or horrifically, but they will save the day. But like one thing that's really stuck with me about like Senta's death is that she doesn't have a heroic death. She doesn't she's not like dying to save her friends. She's not dying to get a transmission out to somebody. She does ultimately, like, she is committed to the cause and she's on the right side of history, but she just dies, you know, almost
a
like
mistake, essentially.
A mistake. And that's like, it's so interesting to like paint that. Like, I think Tony Gilroy is like really a genius when it comes to like, there's so many different threads here, and you can go to like, that's why like all the like facets of like all these different themes are like perfectly exemplified in each singular character and how they make up the bigger picture. But like, that's one thing that's really stuck with me, is that like little tiny arc. And and I say tiny only in the sense of like the grand scope. It's not like a ton of screen time devoted to these two, but I did find it very effective when it was on screen, and the end to it. I was really.
I did want a little bit more. I mean, there's so many characters in this show that it's hard to ask for more time, but I could have used a little bit more time with them reunited before Cinta dies, because it felt a little bit quick. I would have wanted a little bit more space there, a couple more scenes of them together. But I get it. I mean, there's too many other things to get to.
Yeah.
But I did want to highlight something with what you guys were talking about with the way the Empire is shown in Andor is so fascinating to me. And this is something we talked about with season 1, is the way the Empire is so much more terrifying in the way it's depicted in Andor than in any other Star Wars movie or show, because here it feels real. It feels like they can actually do damage, right? They're not just your stereotypical villain, your cardboard cutout bad guy. It feels like they can actually achieve chaos and destruction in a very tangible way. And I think when you talk about the Ghorman massacre, I think what I want to highlight here is that the beauty of the way the story is told is that it shows you how an oppressive force works its way up to committing genocide. How it doesn't just come out of nowhere. How it takes years of planning and chipping away at things that we take for granted, at freedoms, at everything just slowly deteriorating until you get to that point, right? And in A New Hope, in the original Star Wars movie, they commit genocide by just blowing up Alderaan, but you don't really feel it in the way that you do with the Ghorman massacre in episode 8. And I think that what Andor is trying to do is to recontextualize the real impact, the real damage that an imperial force, a fascistic, imperial force can have on people that are supposedly privileged.
When you watch The New Hope and Tarkin gives the order for the Death Star to fire on Alderaan, in that movie, you don't see what Alderaan is like on the ground. You don't meet its people. You don't see what they're doing to resist and to fight. That's not the case with Ghorman and Andor. You see the people. You see that they're a collection of people from different walks of life. Some appear working class. Their leader is a businessman who,
by the way, love that guy.
Yeah. Rylance, I believe, was
from Inglourious Bastards.
Yep. And his daughter is in the resistance movement as well. So this is kind of a thing that these people have relationships. They have vested interests in making sure that their planet is free of imperial control. They know they're being exploited, and no one really listens to them. And so it's the way that it happens, step by step, knowing that these characters, no matter what they do, were doomed all along, is really heartbreaking.
Yeah.
I think when I saw episode 8, that was the Ghorman Massacre episode, it was incredibly dark. And I did cry during that episode, but I would also say that it is, I think, the best quality arc in the entire season, in season 2 at least. But um, that is why it is that much more heartbreaking when you see it than when you're watching The New Hope and
Yeah.
seeing Alderaan get fired upon.
Right, exactly. And they don't the again, the beauty of the way the story is told is that it doesn't just jump straight to there. It's a gradual climb to that point where they're actually opening fire on these innocent people. And to reiterate the point made earlier about how the Empire loses those lines of defense within their own ranks, right? When your Syrils and your Deidres and all these people that believe it to some extent in some kind of law and order, some kind of due process, they go away, right? That's how you get to a full on, fascist dictator rule. That's what this show expertly does with its storytelling. So any other thoughts on this arc? We gotta at least mention Clea. I don't think we've mentioned Clea yet. The scene of her like extracting the secret little bug in the art piece. I love that. That was a cool sequence. So we're skipping there's a lot of like little things in these episodes that we're skipping over. So here's a chance to kind of shout anything out before we move on to the final three.
Oh gosh. That's the funny thing is that like to shout, I mean, God, I feel it's disingenuous to not analyze every frame of these
so
episodes.
rich. It's like
it's so rich,
overflowing.
Yeah, I mean, it's God. I mean, I really can't praise enough just how good the like actual massacre sequences. It's a masterclass in storytelling. It's harrowing,
Singing.
it's
They start singing like the anthem. Oh
my God, yeah! Like I think one of my favorite tools in all of storytelling is the ability to convey to an audience when you as a character or like you as an audience member know that a character or characters plural are fucked. Like, people are fucked and but as an audience member, you have nothing to do but watch. And Andor season 2 successfully encapsulates that anxiety and that dread perfectly. And it paints the tragedy of it in a fantastic way, and it does this like the storytelling of it all perfectly. I loved seeing like Syril kind of like go spy mode and kind of grapple with his more morality and everything through that. And I love seeing Andor in spy mode too, and I just getting to know more about them and also just everything with
his spy names.
Yeah, all great stuff. And like we'll get into like the Luthen stuff and especially in the next 3, which are just incredible. And also everything with Bix, I'm sure we'll dig into because that's such a big part of the season. But yeah, as far as this stuff goes, it is just it's easily the best. While I still prefer season 1 as a whole season, I think the Ghorman arc is the best thing in Andor.
Yeah.
Like the series.
I mean, it's Gilroy just writing a World War II French resistance novel and not being told that he can't, right? Like, that's what feels kind of unreal about watching this unfold. Is like, oh my God, they just let him do like a French resistance spy novel in a Star Wars thing. Like, that's insane.
It's nuts, but they gave him the budget and God bless him, man. He did it. He took the money and ran. Good on him.
Yeah. Gotta shout out the bellhop that becomes the concierge at the hotel.
About the
Yeah.
Ghorman arc, I thought it was really interesting to show the complexities of war. Like, if we're talking about Cinta dying, that's an example of incompetence and friendly fire. If we're talking about how, like, the shot that actually started the massacre wasn't one of the Imperial troops firing into the crowd. It was the Imperial sniper firing on one of his own troops. And
Hmm.
if you really look at the inner workings of how that started, who Partagaz calls a crisis specialist. I believe his name was Captain Kaido. He got a bunch of inexperienced green Imperial Army recruits to be on those front lines, kept the stormtroopers at a distance, kept the sniper even further at a distance. And so, what happens when you have green troops who are extremely inexperienced be put in that kind of situation and have one of their own men just like shot down? They're going to overreact. Presumably under stress, but also under propaganda and
Right.
the other things the empire has done to condition them to believe less in the humanity of these
Exactly.
protesters. And so the fact that the troops that were on, I would say, the front of the Imperial line at Gorman, the fact that they were specifically young green recruits, I think says a lot about how purposefully and intentionally that was all planned out.
Yeah. And it felt so visceral, right? When once the actual violence is unfolding, when the droids come in and start throwing people around, like it, you just feel so terrified. You feel like there's no real way for any of these people to survive this. You know, you really are affected by it. And to end on Andor on a close up of his face as he drives away from it is such an incredible choice because it's like, wow, this is a guy he is gonna live to tell what went down here and everything we saw leading up to here, everything that he experienced, it's all going to weigh on him in a very, very meaningful way. Because at the end of the day, the story of this show is showing how this character becomes a revolutionary. What are the things that happen to him that make him choose to give his life for the rebellion, right? And this is such a key part of that journey. Having him there, having him witness this act, is everything. It's key. It's one of the core moments of not just of this character but of Star Wars, right? Like this is part of the beauty of this show is that it doesn't just live in its own corner. It lives up to the entire canon, right? Like when I think of Star Wars now, I'm going to think of the Ghorman massacre. I'm going to think of Mon Mothma escaping the Senate, which we got to talk about. That's the next episode. It's like, you know, that Andor and Mon survive this escape, and yet you are fully captivated by this entire sequence. You are enthralled. You are at the edge of your seat, wondering what's going to happen next. And I love the way it's shot. I love how they're just walking through actual hallways. I can't believe I have to praise that. But like the fact that they went to a real place and
Yeah.
shot like with cameras with people walking through like actual hallways and steps, incredible. I if I had to pick a favorite episode, I mean I love the one we're about to talk to, the Clea in the hospital. I love that. But this whole Mon escaping the Senate, her speech, I thought is incredible. Just calling out the Emperor, calling out the massacre, the genocide. It could have gone wrong. It could have felt very corny very hokey, very pandering, very like I'm with her liberal bullshit. And
Yeah.
it doesn't. It feels um like you are through Star Wars, through genre sci-fi storytelling, channeling the moment. Like this show is fully meeting the moment that we are living through. And it's not an
Yeah.
answer and it's not a solution. Obviously, you can't watch Andor and think you've done your job to fight fascism. That's not what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But it's pointing people in the right direction in an incredibly meaningful artistic way.
I agree that entire sequence, and that's something that the the whole series, Rogue One, even does perfectly. Where you know the fate of all these characters, you know realistically in both sides of the aisle, they you know they either won't make it or they will make it. You know, just based off like lore and canon, the fact that inherently as a prequel, you know what kind of happens, but that's just the beauty of the writing and the direction and the performances is that you still feel the tension. You still feel the weight of the moment because it sets the stakes so much about what it means for her to speak out, what it means for her
To take that risk.
to paint a target on her back, so to
Yeah.
speak, because you know, I mean, like it's kind of like you know Padme in Revenge of the Sith. Like I mean, it's early days before the Empire largely looms over, but when she speaks out, you know, like it's met with a lot of like disagreement, you know, and that's before Palpatine even fully took over, or you know what I mean, like he fully like as the Emperor took over. So like so now like when you're deep into Imperial rule, to do that, it's and you're right about like meeting the culture where it's at. Like that's the beauty of it here is that it does speak really true to that. Her speech is great. The performance is fantastic. And it's a great little I don't want to say palate cleanser to Gorman because it is very much riding the coattails of how I mean it very much is in response to that, but it's a good dosage of hope following
Yeah.
that no matter how terrible an atrocity can be, there will always be good people to shine a light on these things that imperialism is trying to brush under the rug. And that's, again, you want to talk about like, you know, finding the culture right where it's at when you make art. And that's where that it feels like. It feels like so many, you know, things happen on a day-to-day basis where it's easy to be desensitized and to just be like, you know, I can't, you know, I can't engage with this topic. I can't engage with this other terrible thing that is happening at the hands of my government. But you know, that sequence I think paints a perfect picture of the importance of it to continually, you know, speak out to, you know, engage to do something as hard as it may be, as emotionally tolling
Yeah.
as it may be.
It's the power of the action of a single individual, right? And
Yeah.
obviously she's a very powerful individual. She's a senator, right? She has
Yeah.
this voice as a member of the Senate, but she doesn't know the full impact. She doesn't have the foresight to know what that decision, the ripple effects of that decision, but she knows she has to do something, right? And she
Yeah.
knows that if she doesn't do it, it's very likely that no one in the Senate will. I like the choice of giving you bits of the speeches of the other senators that are just parroting the same talking points. They're basically like the Fox News of Coruscant.
Yes. I love that. I thought that was really clever.
It's
Yeah.
so good. It's so good. There's so many moments like that. Even backtracking to the previous episode that ends with Syril's mom watching essentially Fox News, right? Recounting like the heroes of Ghorman, the fallen Imperial heroes that were destroyed, that were killed by the rebel insurrectionists, the terrorists, right? Like there are so many tiny choices that this show decides to make that give it that texture to make you feel like this is a real fully realized world. Um, and yeah, and I think a lot of this goes back to Nemec and his manifesto, which we end up hearing again in a really incredible scene with Partagaz, right at the end there, where it's about the ripple effects, right? It's about not knowing the full extent of your actions. It's about doing something with the hope that it connects to somebody else without really knowing. And I don't have his full speech pulled up, his full manifesto, but the whole try,
Dude,
I I think about that like every day.
I often I have like a thing where if a TV show makes me feel a certain way, I use the term it makes me want to like run a lap around my couch. Like I want to pause the TV and like just like run in my living room. And when they brought the manifesto back up, I fully just wanted to like pause it,
Yeah. It was
do a
like,
lap,
let's go.
get back down. Because especially like how it pays off. Because I mean, that I loved Andor the second it started. I think the cold open of the first season with him killing the guards and how like it immediately it's great the second it starts. But the moment it hooked me was that scene in question where he's talking to Andor and he's kind of going over his manifesto with him. And I think that's when I was truly like, oh, this is not just like great. This is like definitive Star Wars, something special. Like this is like another level. Like we're going to new heights I didn't think were possible, let alone with streaming. So to tie that back in and to have it be a kind of like focal point of now the Empire is getting scared. They're witnessing the power of unity, the power of what this can become. It's not quite there yet, but they know they know the capability.
There.
Yeah. They see. I mean, I can't help but think about that scene. And stick with me here. That scene in The Bug's Life where Hopper. And I hope you know where I'm going with this. It's where Hopper is talking about. Those other grasshoppers are like laughing and they're like, it's one ant. What can he do? And Hopper, like, he gets the one grain. He's like, does this hurt? No. Does this hurt? No. And then he like floods the bar and all the grains like drown the other grasshoppers. Yes. He's like, because this is what happens when they all band together. We have to stop them. And that's genuinely A Bug's Life has one of the best things about fascism ever made. But
yeah, A Bug's Life is a rebellious text.
It literally is.
Nemec's manifesto. I thought it was a really interesting way to show the power of ideas. You don't have to be an important person in order to have your ideas spread. Nemec was a guy, just a regular guy, and he wrote a book, his manifesto on politics, on governance, the nature of revolutions, and that spread like wildfire by the end of the show. I think it's cool to see. As for the
brilliant
speech in the Imperial Senate, I think Genevieve O'Reilly's delivery of that speech is amazing. It's excellent oratory, and it shows you she is a lone senator in what is no longer a free legislature where ideas are freely discussed and debated, but rather a puppet legislature where she is alone and where the Senate is there to just rubber stamp the policies of the emperor. And the interesting thing about that speech is that she didn't even have to make that speech. She could have just left to Yavin and issued the Declaration of Rebellion from there, which she would later do on the Ghost if you folks have watched Rebels. But I think the point of the speech was to send a message that resistance can be struck at the heart of the empire, directly calling out the emperor in his capital, in his Senate chamber, in a place where at least 90% of the senators are loyalists, I think is really powerful and shows that the empire is vulnerable even in the center of imperial power. It's just amazing to see.
Love it. Very well said. Yeah, I mean that the choices like that is what makes this story more nuanced than I'm Luke Skywalker and I'm going on an adventure to defeat the Empire, which we love. I don't want to knock it, but it's very simple, and this gives it so much weight and so much nuance and so much respect for an adult audience that may want something a little bit more challenging, right? That's really what we're here for with Andor. So let's get into the final stretch of episodes here. And we're gonna have to double back because, like I said, there's been character arcs that we haven't talked about until now. So, like Bix and Clea, we're about to have to recap everything that we haven't touched on until now. But this is essentially what leads directly into the events of Rogue One. We haven't even brought up Saw Gerrera yet, and the whole Rhino huffing. We find out that's what's in his little gas mask thing, which is awesome. But episode 10 in particular, I want to highlight because, like I mentioned at the beginning, we were speculating at the end of season 1 what was going to happen with Luthen. He's not in Rogue One. He's not in A New Hope. This is a fully new character. We got to give Stellan Skarsgård his flowers. He is phenomenal in this role, like a truly iconic character. Gets one of the best scenes in season 1 with his whole monologue, which will remain like one of the best Star Wars moments of all time. And this is the episode where we get the full backstory with him and Clea. And I thought it was incredibly well done. I mean, to have an episode that is constantly giving you flashbacks and you don't see your main character, Andor, at all. You don't see him one time. And it's fully fixated on this dynamic. I think it's safe to say that Clea is kind of one of the secret MVPs of season 2. A character
Big
that
time.
you just didn't really know how much more they could do after season 1. It just felt like that was going to be sort of like a side character. And she kind of becomes a central part of the story here, where you see that she, maybe she's not calling all the shots, but she is an integral core part of the entire operation. And the minute that Luthen becomes incapacitated after a phenomenal confrontation with Daedra, just everything that I could have ever wanted from these two characters finally facing each other. He's out of commission, and she has to break into this hospital to kill him for the rebellion. And I was riveted by this episode. I didn't know what was going to happen at any moment, and I thought the flashbacks didn't break the flow, didn't break the momentum. It served the story perfectly, showing how these two sort of built their relationship. It leaves a lot open if they ever want to go back to these characters ever again in any form. There's a lot more there that they can explore, but they give you the essentials. They give you how they met, how they started to become sort of operatives in the early parts of the rebellion, and it prioritizes their emotional human connection. And I think that's what makes it truly beautiful. It's sort of a makeshift father-daughter relationship. And I was just kind of blown away by this.
Yeah.
So I'm curious your thoughts on all of this.
On Luthen, I did not expect him at all for it to be revealed that he was in the Imperial Army as Sergeant.
Is that what it was? I wasn't sure if that's what was happening.
I never expected that to happen, and some people are theorizing that, and I happen to agree with this take, that Clea is one of the folks who was ravaged by the Empire's attacks on her people, and meeting her really gave some humanity and some kind of purpose to Luthen that made him turn against the Empire from previously being a soldier for it. So them being on what I presume to be Naboo, the Emperor's homeworld, and to be able to like resist is a powerful backstory to both Luthen and Clea. And so when Luthen is incapacitated in the hospital after the encounter with Dedra, he is no longer there for Clea. She's on her own. They are, and this moment is everything that Luthen has trained Clea to be over her entire life, and this is when she has to perform without him. And so I saw the relationship as kind of a yin and yang. One was incomplete without the other, but at this point in time, she's completely in charge. And the way she really does it shows that Clea is really Axis in the end. She's really Axis more than Luthen is Axis.
Okay.
And I think the way Elizabeth Dulau acted that is just amazing.
Yeah, I mean, that, gosh, I mean, that arc is really, really powerful stuff. I wasn't I knew they were going to try to like flesh out Luthen in some way, shape, or form. I didn't know for sure if they would have like actual like flashbacks, if they would like actually dedicate the kind of time that they did to him. But you know, after you watch it, it feels so essential. Like I can't imagine getting through the series without that insight and context. And I agree, you know, with the you know idea that, you know, all the theories about why he really committed, and you know, you really like do you feel the weight of his connection with her through the journey and those flashbacks, and it kind of recontextualizes a lot of that. You know, like especially that kind of his infamous monologue from season 1.
I've made my mind a sunless space.
Yes, yeah. Like it recontextualized that, because you know that like when he's saying those things, there's more to it. Like, you know, like a guy doesn't just give there for not caring about anything, for completely dispatching himself from anyone or anything. Like, he has a drive. There is something underneath this more than just a cause, which is good. That's a good starting point. But ultimately underneath that, there has to be something that personally drives him. Like, you have to have a face. Like, when you think of the people that you're fighting for, there has to be a person, you know what I mean, to kind of put a face on it. And I think it's beautiful that you find out that it's her. You know, it's always been her. We just haven't known that as an audience. And the thing is, that's one of it can often be one of my least favorite things in movies and TV.
The whole like filling in
Yes, to tell you that like these characters that you have spent time with actually have a deeper relationship that you just didn't know about. Like, I find that to be a very hokey thing a majority of the time. Like, because I often feel like a lot of shows, when they resort to that, it feels like, well, you just didn't take the time to develop that before, now you want to, like, you know, that's not what this feels like. It feels very deliberate. It feels like such endearing and sincere storytelling. And that, I mean, the scene where she pulls the plug in the hospital, and like, even, I mean, that's heartbreaking, because at little moments she does it. And I read I think I was listening to a podcast about it, like after it dropped, where it's what a perfect, like, fitting finale for him as a character, for Luthen. Then he got what he wanted. Like, he has an unceremonious death. He has virtually, other than with, you know, her and Cassian like making comments about him, they don't like the Rebel Alliance doesn't like completely negate what he did, but he's not really in the history books. He's not going to go down in history.
Not at all.
He did his thing for sure.
But he basically created the rebellion. Like he's the first guy.
Yeah, he's the guy, like arguably. And that's so fascinating. That's really, really interesting stuff. Yet he has a very unceremonious death. He goes like even the credits, like when it cuts to credits, I believe there's no music. There's like no
well, it's a
sound.
slow fade to black on his dead body.
Yes.
It's so sad.
It's so good. Like that the choice to do that inherently I feel like summarizes the power of that character really beautifully. And even that scene like after she kills him and when she's escaping the hospital and she's like taking out like she's like kind of like going back and forth and like trying to escape.
So
like,
well done.
It's incredible. I love it.
The design of that set is impeccable. The way the show chooses to immerse you in different settings and each time feel like you're in an entirely like fully realized environment is unbelievable. I mean, I think the budget for this show is estimated between like $600 to $700 million, which is unbelievable. Like that's crazy that they did that. But you see it. See it. There's every prop, every detail, everything that every character wears or looks at or interacts with feels real. I just wish that like we could blow that up and spotlight it and give it more and more praise. I mean, it feels like we take it for granted sometimes when we look at a show like this and we just think, oh yeah, it looks great.
Yeah.
The achievement here, it should be celebrated. I hope this thing goes for Emmys because a moment as simple as her grabbing that thing that's keeping him alive, the way she interacts with that prop, just an environmental storytelling.
The show does a really good job at showing the inner workings of in-universe technology. Like we've seen med bays before, we've seen characters get fixed before when they lose their arm, but we have never seen something like a full hospital environment in Star Wars. I think that's really cool to see. I've seen comments on the internet that Andor is a show less about lightsabers and the Force, but more about knobs, switches, and
that's good.
And I think that's completely true. You see how do they navigate? Oh, it turns out they have these little things called star path units. The way they show in-universe technology is really cool. It also really relates back to the technology we have back like in our world. They even have radios.
Mm-hmm. That's what I was going to say. The communication devices, the thing that they destroy when they get caught, the thing that Clea has to pull out of that drawer, that like switchboard thing, that is such a cool design. I want that prop. I'm going to start using that for the podcast.
It's awesome. I mean, there's so much stuff this entire series. Like I think back even to like the earlier episodes with like Syril, his whole like office and the design of it and the kind of like desktop computers and like the flash drives and like all these like little things that are just like it's so like that's something I love about Star Wars. Yeah, it's very tactile, but like also like the way it just merges technology and like aesthetics and that's something I love about Star Wars period. But I do love that this series specifically is going back to a more like analog tangible kind of like feeling where you do feel like you're there because like you said, Ernest, I mean you feel like you're there, you feel like you can walk onto this side of the world, whereas like I mean, I haven't hated like any Disney Plus show. I just mostly and maybe you could argue this is worse. I feel largely just indifferent to most of them. So like Skeleton Crew, for example, not a terrible show by any means, but like I watch that and none of it feels like I could go to this place. Like none of it feels like I can visit, or I can step onto this like ship, or I can go to this house or this planet, right? But like when I'm watching Andor, it really does feel like I could like take a bus to Coruscant. You know what I mean? Like I feel like I can visit this place.
Yeah.
And it really like it goes a long way in the long run. Like,
Well, they pick their spots and they flesh them out. You know, that's what I was saying earlier. Like this apartment, this Coruscant, they get so much out of that set. You know, they
yeah.
dress it and they redress it, and you feel like you are looking at this exact same place through the course of many, many years. And they go all the way with it. I mean,
They do.
and now we have to talk about Bix, because we have this sequence right at the end here where we're finally getting Clea out of Coruscant, and there's this whole standoff at this apartment. But this is not the first time we've been in this apartment. This is an apartment that we return to over and over throughout the season. I think that's such a great choice to find this place and give it a different flavor, a different life throughout the course of the story. And earlier in the season, this was where Bix was strung out on whatever fucking drugs she was on, as Andor was off on his Ghorman missions. And obviously, like, you know, the set pieces here are phenomenal, but the quiet moments are really meaningful too. And we haven't talked enough about Bix, and I wanna make sure we touch on her character here, because there's a lot of, you could say that she gets kind of short shifted here in this season. But there's a lot to dig into here, and I keep thinking about her sitting in this apartment so alone, so lonely, so strung out, and then they give her this beautiful moment where she does these like hand movement dance thing with Andor to say goodbye. There's a lot to love here. So I'm curious what you guys thought of Bix throughout the season.
I think it's really beautiful the way they portrayed her, and that you might be on Coruscant, you might be at a safe house, and you really can't talk to many people or have a social circle because you're essentially a fugitive. But she still celebrates the traditions that she's built up during her time in Ferrix, and eventually she's a character that shows incredible growth. Goes from barely having her life together to getting revenge on the people that inflicted her pain. It was one of the best scenes regarding Bix, I thought, was when she does Luthen's mission to kill Dr. Gorst. That was amazing to see. You could clearly tell that Luthen had got his information about where he was from Lonnie, his little agent in the ISB. But the way that was portrayed is really fascinating. And then you see her go from Coruscant to when she's finally on Yavin, and she's a bit more peaceful, away from her abusers, and she's gone through so much suffering throughout the show. And as I was watching it, I was like, I would hate to see Bix die at the end of the show after all that she has gone through. And I thought that the ending she got was really good and kind of sad at the same time, that, you know, she left him on Yavin and said, I'll find you after the war is over. And for those who have watched Rogue One, we know how that ends, but it's a really complex arc that shows a lot of growth throughout the show.
Yeah, I mean, so with Bix, I think so the beginning of her arc, I was very worried with where it was going. Kind of like what you said, Ernest, like how it was maybe like it felt like she was a little bit to the side this season, because I was getting worried about how it begins with her almost being assaulted. I mean, she was assaulted, but thankfully didn't go as far as the security guard would have or the officer would have wanted.
We hear the word rape in Star Wars for the first time.
Yeah, it's that. I mean, I think everyone that is bitching about that is like ridiculous.
Stupid.
That is like the craziest shit. But
Grow up.
Because as if a fascist would what are they going to draw the line? Like, no, like stop. Like it's ridiculous. And they handle it perfectly. Like the way they do that is great. But so I was a little bit worried with, because that seems really great. But when they introduced like her being stuck in the apartment and Luthen giving her, the drug that she takes, I was really worried that we were going down a rabbit hole where it was going to end up with her like overdosing or something, right? Because I was kind of under the assumption that based off of how jaded Andor is kind of at the beginning of Rogue One, that it would be due to Bix dying. And luckily, I think the great thing about Bix's arc this season is that it shows the lows that she goes through in the aftermath of trauma, but I think very wisely and beautifully, it shows her recapturing her agency and rediscovering herself through her pain and finding meaning within it to fight and to not let it define her. And I was really impressed with how it broke the mold of what, I mean, maybe it's my fault. I should know by this point that the show is going to do better than what I expect of other things. And it truly knocks out of the park. And I think the one of my favorite scenes of the entire season, let alone series, is the scene where Bix and Andor talk to the Force healer. And I think that's episode 7, I believe.
Which they don't even tell you that they don't even say the word Force.
Yeah. It's because something we keep talking about in this pod is that a lot of the best things here recontextualize Rogue One too. And I think that scene, well, first of all, it just does a beautiful job at setting up the finale and the decision of Bix to leave Andor because she understands the importance that he plays, not just through his actions, but there's something about hearing an actual Force healer talk to her about she can't quite tell you what his deal is. She can't quite tell you what it means, but she knows there's a vital importance to Andor, that there's something about him that without him, the rebellion ceases to exist or to, push forward. And I think that sets the stage perfectly. And also like just the way that scene is like written, it's so beautiful. Like the way it catches Cassian off guard. And he's kind of just like in disbelief about it. And it sets the stage perfectly to his attitude towards the Force. And like, oh my God, I forgot those two guys' names from Rogue One. Chirrut Imwe and
the like Force sensitive kind of guys. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. They it perfectly sets the stage for them where they are very Donnie Yen. Yeah, I forgot. I cannot find that character's name. But their entire arc of that movie is just basically about through one another, they learn about the power of faith and trust, and even blind faith can be a beautiful thing. And that, I think, is kind of exemplified in that brief sequence where they can't explain it. They just feel a force, so to speak, to a pull for good. And that they know, even though they don't understand it, they don't see the beauty. They don't see the end game that of how Cassian's actions, his selfless actions, will ultimately pave the way for freedom for so many people. A truly free galaxy.
Yeah.
But all you feel in that moment, or all that Bix is going to feel in that moment, is the loss, the devastation. But it's such a selfless action that she takes, knowing that she's going to lose the love of her life. And I think in that moment, she knows she's pregnant. So that makes it all the more devastating when she decides to leave him.
Yeah.
And that also again recontextualizes Rogue One, where I thought, again, going into Rogue One, I thought Bix dying would be the thing that makes him jaded, but it's the fact that he's just lost so many people, and not even like literal like she died or anything, but he's just lost people one way or another. They died, they left, he had to abandon them. Either way, people are expendable to him because of that one line where anything that pushes the line forward is worth the cause.
Right.
And
the manifesto, the Nemec.
Yeah, it's perfectly exemplified within the sacrifices that are displayed in the last few episodes. So
again, it's the idea that it's not fun and games, but also that usually we associate Star Wars with Force lightsaber fights, but when the Force healer, so you could say, refers to Cassian as the messenger of sorts, it makes you understand it's not just Force users that are defining the narrative in Star Wars, and that many of these ordinary characters are arguably just as important. And so when Bix leaves him, I think she's doing it with the understanding that he is needed for the rebellion, and there's a purpose.
Yeah, he's special.
What she does. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I think just to shout out that Force healer again, I think that whole scene feels very 70s. And I love that about it. That now that we're in Yavin, the show is really leaning into that vibe that Rogue One, I think, did really well of trying to recapture the texture and the look of the original Star Wars movie, but updated in the 21st century, where it's not super glossy and, kind of digital, with the look that we had seen with the prequels, but more so kind of the original trilogy, that texture. That Force healer scene just gave me crazy 70s vibes. I don't know if it was like her hair or her costume or something, but I was like, oh wow, like we are just like approaching the energy of A New Hope right now with this scene. So I love that. And then, yeah, kind of to reiterate this whole thing with Bix and her choice and her sacrifice, I really do think that what you guys are touching on is just this idea of what does rebellion mean when you're not the one out there fighting, right? And I think that that's what they're trying to capture to some extent with the Bix character. She is someone who is wholeheartedly a part of the rebellion. She wants to be a part of it. She has so many scenes with Andor where they're talking about doing this together and giving themselves over to this cause together. But the choice to pull out of it, I don't think is meant to be this idea of her giving up on this cause and this idea of her saying that actually she doesn't want to be a rebel. I think that her choice is part of the rebellion to say like, hey, my sacrifice is to give birth to this new generation that will carry forward the cause, right? And maybe we'll get the little baby Andor Jr. show. Who knows? Whatever. I don't give a fuck. But the notion of this show ending on that note, that the final note, the final little button is her with the baby looking out on the wheat fields, on the wheat planet, whatever it's called. That I think is meant to be, it's not meant to be a repudiation of rebellion. It is meant to be an endorsement, but not in the sense of like, we're going to die for this cause, but we're going to live. That's the sacrifice.
I think that's the beauty of it, is like it's both, or not both in the sense of like it doesn't try to like downplay or scare you away from the cost of it, but it shows the reality of like, and that's like one of the tragedies is that by all likelihood Cassian had no clue he had a kid, right? He had no clue about that. Which I think adds to the tragedy of Rogue One. Like I really liked Rogue One when I saw it the first time, although I thought it was a little bit messy. And then one time I saw like a guy, I think it was on Letterboxd or Twitter or something, say that like he loves Rogue One because it. Okay, so one of the most perplexing things about Rogue One as a movie to me is that the first half of it is so sporadically edited and it feels so all over the place. It feels like it's made by committee. And then the second half of the movie, I can't even do like first, second, third act. It's like split down the middle of the second act, where after a certain point, it becomes like incredible. And I have always struggled with that about that movie. And then I saw someone with the take of like, not to, completely dismiss any issues that Rogue One has, but he copes with it in the sense that like it's about formation of the rebellion and how the movie gets tighter and leaner when they actually come together as a unit like the Rebel Alliance does. And I've always like really prescribed to that just so I could like enjoy the movie more, but I also do look at it in a deeper sense where I'm like, it works. Like I've rewatched it through that lens. And let me tell you, when they released it in IMAX a few years ago and I went to go see it and I watched through that lens, I was like, this plays completely now. It got me. And I think they did that re-release right before Andor came out, because I remember the tag of that was it was a scene where Luthen meets Andor for the first time. So like they're plugging the Disney Plus stuff during that re-release. But I think it adds to the beauty and the tragedy of Rogue One and to what Andor sacrificed, but also to what you're saying, but like in a good way too, like what he sacrificed for, what he did it for, and that's exemplified through Luthen's arc, through what, the final shot with Bix. Like,
remember what he tells Bond, make it worth it.
Make it worth
think
it.
One
I mean,
of the
hell yeah.
interesting things that I really saw out of Andor himself was in season 1, he says this line, it's better to live. And towards the end of season 2, he's talking with Clea about how, he wants to be done with it. And he shows signs of exhaustion and that he's not ready to continue in this fight anymore. And I think the fact that if he had known that he had a son, that might strengthen that conviction and make him think, I'm a father now. I have to be there for my son. I have to live. And I think Bix leaving sort of pushes him towards the opposite. He doesn't know that, and he thinks I have to fight for this rebellion. This is my
destiny,
life's calling, reinforced by his experience with the Force healer as you end the show, and as the show goes into the beginning of Rogue One. But another thing that I thought was really cool was the evolution of the Rebel Alliance all throughout the show, going from many different factions, going into like a single unified command on Yavin. I know we haven't talked about Saw much yet, but
he's off on his own.
You remember his scene where he says there's neo-Republicans, separatists, and he mentions all kinds of factions and says they're all lost. He's a bit of an acceleration. So he's fighting the Empire, but doesn't really have a plan for what comes after. And so all these ragtag units are combined steadily, well, not Saw's unit in particular, but the others, into a unified, disciplined command. And so Luthen is quite instrumental in setting this up. And I knew when he made that monologue in season 1 that he wasn't going to survive the show. I just didn't expect, a
sunrise he'll never see. Yeah,
a sunrise he'll never see. But didn't expect to know how it would happen. So all these characters, their arcs come together in the last 3 episodes, and it's so cool to see.
It's very satisfying. And I mean, when you just look at Saw, Mon, and Luthen, they form this like perfect triangle of what the Rebel Alliance is built upon, this foundation, right? Where you have Mon in the government, a part of sort of the imperial apparatus, working with, oh my God, I can't believe we haven't mentioned his name yet, Organa.
Oh my God. Yeah, and you know what? Shout out to Jimmy, or not Jimmy Spets. Oh my God, Christopher
Benjamin Bratt.
Right? Benjamin Bratt, my bad. Yes,
He does a great job here stepping in.
Yeah, not a tall. I mean, it is a tall order to replace Jimmy Spence, who has played the role for over 20 years now. But he does a great job, and I've always loved Benjamin Bratt. I think he's great in everything he's in. But
I mean, he gets that Gilroy dialogue. I know Jimmy Smith was looking at it like, damn it.
Yeah. I mean, and I do wish we could have just like, as a completionist, like my OCD kicks in a little bit where I'm like, I wanted the like just like one more Jimmy Smits out of, because that probably would have been the last time we ever saw Bale on screen. Because like, I mean, unless you do have like another thing for Bale, but canonically he's dead in like 2 weeks. So like I don't know how, unless you go back to the well again, I don't know how you have another Bale Organa thing. But Benjamin Bratt does a great job. He really steps into the role nicely. And I also and I think the way they include the character, like aside from the performance, like the way they write him in is perfect. And I love that because the thing about Bale as a character is that he's always been kind of portrayed as a softie, because he's Leia's dad. He's Leia's dad. So it's, but the way they portray him here, he's kind of a hard ass, and
he's scared. I think a lot
rightfully
of these scenes in Coruscant are people who are genuinely terrified of what will happen to them if they step out of line.
Yeah.
And I think that the Organa character is that. I think the guy that they have as like the ambassador to Ghorman is that the couple scenes great. That guy gets. And I think Mon herself is scared, right? But she's the one that actually takes the leap and takes that chance. But I do love the bits that we get of Organa and Yavin as well. We see that he does eventually get there after that year break. But yeah, the foundation, this triangle of Mon in the government, of Luthen full on spy mode, impersonating this art collector while doing all these machinations behind the scenes, and then Saw Gerrera fully militaristic, just leaning into the terrorism, leaning into the acts of insurrection and violence. Those are the necessary things that build a rebellion. And I love that this show doesn't shy away from that and tells you that each part of this is necessary. You need all three of these pieces to have a successful apparatus that successfully overthrows the Empire. That's how you get there. I know Luke comes in and blows up the Death Star and everyone has a party and everyone gets a medal at the end, but you don't get there without these people building that foundation. And you have, your morally ambiguous figures and your actually like morally reprehensible figure in Saw, who's actually just like out there committing crimes, but they need him. And that is, I think it's crazy to call a show on the Disney Plus streaming platform, the Walt Disney Mouse Corporation internet streaming service, brave and revolutionary, but it kind of feels that way for them to be like, hey, look, that you need, in order to actually successfully overthrow a fascistic dictatorship, an authoritarian power grab, you need a fucking crazy terrorist like Saw Gerrera. That's crazy.
I just thought about this, that the three parts that Mon, Luthen, and Saw represent. Mon represents political expertise. Saw represents the military angle, and Luthen represents the intelligence angle. And you need all three to
Yes.
pull off a successful, overthrow of the imperial government, or like any authoritarian government. As a character, morally, I deeply dislike Saw for obvious reasons, but I think it is important to show him in the show because um, rebellions aren't pretty. Every
Messy.
rebellion isn't just going to have people who are completely morally upright. It's going to have a variety of folks, a diversity of folks
that disagree with each other and don't get along.
Clearly, the rebel command at Yavin, by the last episode, they show their disdain for Luthen, even though Luthen built up the whole foundation for the rebellion. They clearly don't like what Saw is doing on Jeddah either. So it's, again, a diversity of folks are impacted by the government that is the Empire in Star Wars. And as you said, they can't get along. And
but they're part of the same cause. So they
part
have
of the
to.
same cause. You have accelerationists, you've got people who you'd consider very morally upright, like Mon Mothma. Luthen is kind of in terms of what you'd consider moral, I would say Luthen is kind of in the middle between Mon and Saw. It's a very interesting dynamic to see. Also really realistic when it comes to like how revolutions have worked throughout like history in general.
Yeah.
So,
or
as a history buff, I love it.
Or a political system that is trying to gain power when you have the rise of fascism, right? Like I very much see a parallel to our current moment where we as the left cannot get our shit together. We cannot agree. We cannot figure out a way to come together. And I think this show taps at something really astute with how it shows like what it takes to actually fight an empire. And it's not pretty. It's not pretty, and it's not all heroes, and not everyone can be Luke Skywalker, right?
Yeah, I mean that's the I've always like loved that what do you call it? Like Rogue One and Andor both like pull him back into the story because he's been Saw's been a very interesting character ever since the Clone Wars, which I mean, Ernest, did you ever watch Clone Wars, or were you
Rogue was my introduction to Saw.
Yeah, he's I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he appears in the first season of Clone Wars, if not the second or so.
Did he talk like this? Has he always referred to everything like this? I'm just gonna start doing the podcast like this.
I've saw like a TikTok trend of people doing like the Saw Gerrera voice, and it kills me every time. No, that's the funny thing about him in Clone Wars is that he's much younger in Clone Wars, but he's always been
pre-Rito addiction.
Yeah. Well, like there's episodes where he's like interacting with like a young like Padawan Ahsoka, and he's calmer and he's younger and feistier, but he's still a hothead. He's still quick to act, where the Jedi are more quick to like plan and strategize, and he's more of a brute force. And it's interesting to see him kind of develop over time throughout the mediums that you see him in, because he pops up in Rebels. He's on so many different like Star Wars shows and things, and to see him go from like a hothead to a guy who has legit tragedy strike him to which develops into a force for change, where he's a radicalist. He even before the Jedi Order falls, like he is critical highly of both sides. He questions the effectiveness of the Jedi Order, even when they're at the height of their power, when it feels like nothing can touch them critically. So to see where he ends up in Andor, where he is kind of he's on their team, so to speak. I mean, that's kind of what it's interesting. That's what he's always been as a character, but it's funny to see that still change. Like the context of it changes through the rebellion from the Jedi Order and so on. So, yeah, I liked his involvement here. It does, there are like small moments where it kind of feels like he's a little bit forced in there just because he's in Rogue One. But I think given what even if that is the case, what they do with him is still really good. Like I like seeing him pop up, and I also think it makes his appearance in very quick death in Rogue One. Spoilers for anyone who hasn't seen Rogue One. His very quick death in Rogue One, which I thought was like super jarring when I saw it in 2016.
It's like, who even is this guy?
Well, I mean, for me as someone that, I mean, I'm not like, he's not like my favorite Glub Shido or anything, but like, even I, like, just as someone who like knew who Saw Gerrera was, and to have Forrest Whitaker play him, I'm like, holy shit, you got Forrest Whitaker to play Saw Gerrera. That's fucking nuts. I'm like, you must have a really meaty role for it. And then, he dies in the first scene he's in. So like, that's kind of like, I do appreciate the adding of layers to him, and to kind of, his death in Rogue One no longer feels like a singular small thing where it could have been any character. So why make it Saw Gerrera? To now where it feels
it's Gilroy and his team. They just they are given this opportunity to expand upon an established character, and they're like, yep, we can do it.
And I think that's like one of the things about I guess to go to like the finale and how it serves as finale, like that's the tricky thing about doing a show like Andor, and not that there's many like it as far as like what it has to be, where it has a finale, a series finale, but you also in the same breath cannot really end anything. You know what I mean? Like it's a prequel to a prequel. So there's only so much finality that you can have, so to speak. And that's one of the big things I say worried about, but more so just curious about. I was confident that the team could pull it off in the long run. But I was really curious, like, how do you even end a show where season 3 is inherently a movie that came out 9 years ago, like that's pretty much, but I'm like, as someone that just really loves the art of television and really hates when things feel, tune in next week. Like that's one thing with like Marvel, the MCU shows that I even as a big Marvel fan, like
never ending.
Like it really does feel like shows can't be shows. Like the beauty of shows is that they begin and they end, and then there's a life cycle there, right? And to have, I don't know, Miss Marvel just be a trailer for the Marvels, for example, it's just not satisfying. So not that I expected after the first season for this to be that, but I was really curious as to where they would take it. And I think given the context of what it has to be in both aisles, I can't imagine them doing it any better. They do make it feel like a finale. It does feel like the end almost of an era, because I kind of can't imagine they have another live action show that takes place in this timeline. I think they've kind of milked the pre-New Hope, between 3 and 4 timeline as far as it can go. But
move on to something else.
Yeah, but as far as they go, it feels like kind of a finale for that. Like I feel like this is, at least for a while, the last note on the story of Rebellion. And in that sense, it does feel like a finale, and it feels like, and that final sequence very wisely feels like an epilogue to Rogue One. It adds an unexpected layer that I thought was a beautiful touch.
All right, Vihan, let's start to wind down here. So thoughts on the finale and anything else that you haven't gotten a chance to say on Andor season 2 as we start to wind down.
Folks have, we perceive Star Wars as a few trilogies, right? We have the prequels, we have a few shows, the originals, the sequels. I felt like season 1, season 2, and Rogue One are a trilogy unto themselves. Very similar vibe, similar style of filmmaking, content creation, props that we don't really see in something like an animated show like Clone Wars. And trust me, Clone Wars is great. It's one of my favorites, but it's not quite the same. It's also not quite the same as the prequels and the originals. The prequels, you could say, are really lightsaber, Force, Jedi versus Sith focused, and the originals are a bit more still Force focused, but a little less on the Jedi versus Sith emphasis. And so I think the Andor slash Rogue One trilogy is a departure from both, and I'm not saying it's a good or bad thing, but it is quite refreshing, and it does make me kind of sad that in my opinion, it's probably never going to be this good again.
We'll be very lucky if it is.
We'll be lucky if it is. It'll be a miracle, but again, I'm very happy to have lived through such a time of Star Wars because what was it? When the prequels came out, I was barely 2 years or 5 years old. I wasn't even alive when the originals came out. Didn't really care for the sequel trilogy. So for Rogue One and Andor to come out at a time when I can process information to the best of my ability is quite nice. And I would say probably quite nice to many other people.
So Andor is your Star Wars. So you'd say Andor is like the definitive Star Wars. That's kind of what I'm feeling from you.
I wouldn't say definitive because, as they say, only a Sith speaks in absolutes.
Hell yeah!
But
that's good.
It is defining for its time. I will say that.
Okay, so you said Revenge of the Sith is still like your top tier, right? You said that was your favorite?
In terms of films, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
I wouldn't compare Andor to Revenge of the Sith because I feel like that's comparing apples and oranges.
Okay, fair. Yeah, although we do see the Senate, the Imperial Senate in both.
That aesthetic is so like that did like little design. Like I know you're talking about like the Senate like that that will never get old to me. Like it's so fucking cool every time they show it. It's such a cool design. For me, I think it honestly the fact that a Disney Plus show can even get in the conversation like that's of like best Star Wars is a success within itself. Let alone have serious consideration on my end, considering how much Star Wars means to me. I'll still say that I think Empire's the best. I think. I'd probably go A New Hope. I'm a Last Jedi glazer. I love Last Jedi. I'm sorry, number 3 for me. Then honestly, if you want to go like a 4, 5, and 6 tie for me, because I really cannot decide. I'll go like Jedi, Revenge of the Sith, and Andor just as a package. Like in one, like even though I do have like a slight preference season 1 of Andor, I'm just going to count it as one big package. Where I do think just as a whole,
it's 24 hours of story. It's 24 episodes. I mean, you kind of have. It's so hard to rank 24 hours of story with like 2.5 hour films. That's yeah, it's like you said, it's apples and oranges. It's not, you can't quite compare them. But it's an achievement, and it's, Star Wars aside, the ideal promise of franchise intellectual property mining for content for streaming services. Like it will not get better than this.
No, I don't think it will. I think it's kind of bittersweet because I do feel like the bubble has popped as far as like Disney Plus streaming goes. I mean, Tony Gilroy even did like an interview recently about how they told him like I think Disney's probably mad at how much he's talking in the post interviews now, but he said that they gave him $625 for season 2, which is nuts. And
that's just for season 2.
Apparently, I mean, I don't know how accurate it is, but
I thought that was for both seasons.
I mean, maybe
insane.
Maybe I misread it. Maybe the head. I'll be honest, I only read the headline, but so maybe that's misleading. But either way, I mean, I think 625 for 2 seasons is even like a lot just for a streaming show. I mean, like. But he said, like, they gave me the money, but then they told me at the same breath that streaming is dead, which I think is like a crazy sentence that Bob Iger could tell him.
What was it? The one of the few things they told him was, do whatever you want, just don't have "fuck the Empire" as a line in the last episode of season 1, and hence they changed it to like "fight the Empire."
Right.
But it's amazing that they gave him that much creative freedom as somebody who's not a fan of the sequels and how Disney handled all of that. I do believe they can come out with some very good content if you find the right people, give them the resources, and give them the freedom to do what they want. And I think folks like Dave Filoni and Tony Gilroy, especially Tony Gilroy, have been very good at taking full advantage of that. So I hope they keep doing more of that in the future.
Yeah. I mean, as good as Filoni has been in kind of steering the ship, he leans way too much into, I love my action figures. Gilroy has this reverence and this respect for the audience that I think is just magnificent. And his collaborators here, I mean, it's not just him. They have just absolutely hit it out of the park. I mean, this thing is such a home run. Before we end, I wanted to shout out the set designer for this, or the production designer. I think Luke Hull, who gets executive producer credit on this season. So Gilroy has talked about how the writing process is not just scripting. It's the process of designing this whole world. And so to bring on somebody like Luke Hull, who's the production designer, into this like higher level of decision making, I think is one of the genius choices that just elevates this show to the level that it is and the accomplishment that it is.
Big time.
So what a triumph. What an incredible show. I think it's my show of the year. There's a couple that might vie for its spot. I love the studio. Adam, I know you've seen the studio. Vihan, if you're interested in the studio, it's an Apple TV Plus show. I highly recommend it. I'm also watching The Pit, which I am loving.
Pinheads Rise Up. I love The Pit. I'm sorry, Andor. Pit's where I'm at, but Andor's a close second.
I haven't finished it yet. I'm on episode 11, I think. So it's about
good.
It's about to ramp up. But yeah, I'm loving TV this year, and Andor's is right up there in the top tier. So
I haven't checked out the studio, but I do intend to. So thank you for that recommendation.
Look out for more TV pods on the feed coming at you soon. We do have a Last of Us podcast, Last of Us Season 2 podcast that we'll be recording in a couple of days, so stay tuned for that. But in the meantime, thank you both for joining me on this amazing discussion of Andor. I appreciate you both. Thank you for taking the time. Thank you for sharing your insights. This has been amazing. A worthy show of such a deep analysis. So thank you for providing it. Please sign off. Let the people know anything you want to plug, any life advice, any last words, parting words you want to say. Vihan, go ahead before we close out.
Just wanted to say it was a wonderful conversation. Thank you for having me, and may the force be with you.
Thank you, Adam.
You guys can follow me on I mean, I'm used to saying me, but you can follow my podcast, Films for Breakfast. It's the pod itself is on all the major platforms. My website, Films for Breakfast.
You just had Hunter on for Mission.
Yeah, I listened to your most recent episode. We did not soy boy glaze it. We had a fair, albeit passionate conversation about that movie. But yes, we did a massive episode. I did take a week off. Sorry for any Karate Kid Legends fans. I was in Ohio. But I am back this week, or actually next week. I'll be back for How to Train Your Dragon. But yeah, you guys can follow that also on like Threads, Blue Sky, Instagram, off Twitter. So don't look for me there, but anywhere else, the pod's on. And I'll just say, calm, kindness, kinship, love. I've given up on all chance at inner peace. So on that note, I really appreciate you guys having me on. It was a wonderful conversation, and I think enlightened my insight into season 2 even more.
Gonna miss this show. But we had to give it a good send off here. So thanks again. Thank you all for listening. Please rate and review and subscribe, like, and comment. Let us know your thoughts on Andor season 2. Check out WeBoughtAMic.net to get every episode in your email inbox. Join the Discord, get involved, get in the conversation. Patreon.com/WeBoughtAMic, $5 a month if you want to support everything that we do here at We Bought a Mic. Next week, like I said, The Last of Us season 2. We also plan on giving you thoughts on Friendship, the new Tim Robinson A24 comedy. And then maybe a little studio talk. And I'm ready for 28 years later. That's what I got my sights set on. So stick around for that. Thank you again, Adam. Thank you again, Vihan. Until next time, may the Force be with you.